Welcome, guys. We've had the Canadian Grand Prix, and what a weekend of action we got from Friday all the way through to Sunday. This weekend delivered in every single way. And now it's that time where we go through and rate each and every one of the drivers and how they got on over the whole weekend. Let's get to it. As ever, we always start with the race winner. Kimi Antonelli makes it 4 wins in a row when it came to Sunday. He's had a up and down, tipsy-turvy weekend, but one thing is for sure, he's been quick and on it, and he's kept George Russell honest in a weekend where it was all about George, and actually it was George is going to be faster here. He's going to be the man to beat, but the pressure's on. He needs to really show he's the man that's leading this Mercedes team, and Kimi didn't let him rest a beat throughout that whole weekend. He was beaten to the sprint qualifying. In the sprint race, he was pushed off, lost his head a little bit, and that cost him coming home in second place and a point to his teammate, and that could be an all-important point when it comes to the end of the season. Who knows? But it was really, really good racing. He was very, very quick. He was there or thereabouts with George Russell. And in the last year that we were here, it was a comfortable win for George Russell. And Antonelli drove home a bit of a distance place behind him, didn't he? So it was a difficult weekend for him. And you thought, ooh, you know, he might have to step up a little bit here, Kimi. He's coming in with confidence, but there's obviously bit of a tipsy start sort of season so far, hasn't it? And there was a 3-week break since Miami, and so he came in and he was brilliant. There's two ways about that. In the race with him and George Russell, it was nip and tuck, mistakes again, but from George and pretty much everyone on the field actually were making mistakes throughout that race. It wasn't a clean lights to flag victory, but he got a good start, which is something that he's had problems with. Mercedes saying they fixed something. He's had a new steering wheel, has Kimi Antonelli, that should help him with his race starts, and he got a better start than George Russell, and led effectively into turn one, because we had Norris who started on the inters in the McLaren. But it was brilliant action from him and George Russell. He was fiery, he was feisty, everything you want from two guys just going head to toe for action and for a championship with his teammate. It's a shame the way that it ended, the battle with George Russell, who was just in the lead ahead of him at that time. But, he'll take it. It's a huge 20.5 points advantage for him this weekend. So he leads now, 43 or 44 points ahead of George Russell, which is absolutely brilliant in the championship. And he needs to make as much headway as he can, a little bit like Oscar Piastri does, because there's no doubt there's going to be harder weekends to come. Other teams might step up, but he's been getting the job done, and he's done it again this weekend. It's hard to rate him because he's sort of a little bit of a scrappy sprint, but a fantastic race weekend. But I'm going to go for a 10 because he's done the job. He's won again. Tricky circumstances. We won't know how it would have panned out had he had that battle with George throughout the whole race, and who would have finished ahead. We got robbed a little bit of that audience, but it was a brilliant 31 laps while the two were at it, hammer and tongs at the beginning. So I'm going to stick with a 10 because it's a win, and a brilliant win for Kimi Antonelli. Second place man, Lewis Hamilton, and a brilliant weekend for him in Ferrari. Back on the podium again, his second podium for Ferrari, and he's gone one step higher than his third in China. He's been on top of his teammate Charles Leclerc all weekend, much happier with the car, and that showed. He outqualified him in the sprint qualifying. The sprint race, it looked like a solid P4 was on, but then he got passed by Max, and that out of sync meant he got passed by Charles Leclerc. So that didn't go too well for him, but again, he stepped it up again in qualifying. And then in the race, he got a little bit lucky, you've got to say, with the two McLarens up ahead of him. Would he have beaten them had they been in the race with the right tyres? Who knows? But he admitted himself that he nearly took that move to go onto the Inters at the start, and that would have finished his race off. But in the end, it's, your small margins, and he was on the right side of that. And a brilliant fight back with Max Verstappen. He had a bit of a gap to close, didn't he, on the second stint on the mediums, where his car and he really came to life in the Canadian Grand Prix, where he just started to eke out and cut into that gap of Max Verstappen. And then we got a brilliant race again with the pair of them, a nice move around the outside. It was, tricky actually, because he was saying it was a lot of management of throttle, battery, just to make sure you stay ahead, even once you did get ahead, because Max did not let him rest throughout once he got past. And it looked like at one point he might just romp away. He got close to breaking that 1 second gap, but then he got traffic, which didn't help him out. But he'll be mega happy with this weekend. A brilliant podium result for him, and he just looked on it from day dot. So I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. Third place man, Max Verstappen, and I just don't think that was on the cards for him this weekend at all, and he's a massive gainer from the two McLarens ahead of him. He did say in the press conference afterwards, when he seen the two McLarens on Inter, he was just like, thank you very much, guys. Super happy with their decision to go on the Inters, because it was 2 places up. But a really good race. He got past Lewis Hamilton early doors, and then, Lewis clawed him back. I don't know if he was carrying some sort of issue, because he was really worried about the gap behind Lewis. He was almost like he's going to have to concede this place to Lewis Hamilton, and it's the guys behind where he might be under pressure. But no, it was just Lewis Hamilton, and he managed to stick with him. And that boost, getting that sort of being able to stick within Lewis Hamilton, he was like, it's so efficient around Canada having that boost. It was an easy 3/10 down that straight once you were able to get in there and follow. So his race was absolutely brilliant, but his sprint race was really difficult. He was absolutely nowhere in qualifying, and he finished 7th in the sprint race as well. So really a mixture of weekend, but when it counted, he's got his first podium with Red Bull, so he could be mega happy with that. Difficult to judge him because it's so mixed, but I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. Fourth place man, Charles Leclerc, and it's been a really difficult weekend for him around Canada. He just said he just couldn't get on top of this car, and he just apologised to the whole team. He says it was just down to me, where it just wasn't quick enough this weekend. He really struggled to get on top of the brakes, and it's such a big circuit on the brakes is Canada. It's what it's all about, really. You've just got huge stopping zones with some chicanes and a big hairpin, and then traction. And if you can't slow the thing down, you're going to really struggle. He was a country mile behind Lewis Hamilton in the race, and then out-qualified by him both times. So really, really difficult. He had a big moment coming out of the final chicane as well, where he's lucky he didn't clip the wall again. Really difficult weekend. He's been put massively in the shade by Lewis Hamilton. He's got some work to do. Sprint wasn't great. I mean, he did finish ahead of Lewis in the end, thanks to, Max putting Lewis offline and he nipping past him. But other than that, that was the only sort of highlight, if you can call it a highlight, because he just wasn't impressed with himself at all with Charles Leclerc. Really beat him down in himself. But he goes to his home Grand Prix next in Monaco, so I'll be hopeful he can put things right there. But a difficult weekend for Charles. I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. Fifth place man, Isaac Hadjar, and he looked really on the pace when it came to Canada. Got really unlucky with his sprint race with the car issue. He was really on the pace of Max Verstappen, much improved compared to Miami, where he was 7-8 tenths of the gap of Max Verstappen. Here it was back to what we've seen in the early parts of the season, a tenth or two. But yeah, he was at one point in qualifying, it looked like he'd out-qualify Max Verstappen, but it was his Q3 where he just didn't step it up a little bit more, and he could have been really, really high up. He was absolutely kicking himself after that. But in the race, he did absolutely what he needed to do, and probably all that you could expect of him. It was a clean race, not too many errors. He wasn't really fighting for any podium positions, and he wasn't really on the back of Charles Leclerc too much either. But a much better and solid weekend for him. I've given him a 7 out of 10. Sixth place man, Franco Colapinto, his best finish in Formula One, and it was probably one of his best weekends as well. He was consistent throughout. It wasn't just a strong performance, and thanks to the McLaren, he's picked up the extra positions in the race because he was on it in sprint qualifying. Just missed out on a point in the sprint race as well. He was P9, and looked like a P8 was possibly on for him, but in the race he was a little bit of a boring race for him. He was in no man's land. He was comfortably behind the Red Bulls of Isaac Hadjar, and he was at a massive gap of 15, 16 seconds to the Racing Bulls. The Alpine, again, comfortably the fifth fastest car, but it's got a bit of a way to break up into that top four yet. And Franco did all he could, and he's beaten his teammate this weekend, so he can be much happier with that. I've given him an 8 out of 10. Seventh place man, Liam Lawson, and he's come back with a good weekend in the end. He got really unlucky with the sprint qualifying where he had car issues, couldn't take part in that. In the race, though, he did absolutely everything that he could do. He was a little bit behind Arvid Lindblad, so this one, I think, had Arvid got off the start grid, I mean, would we be talking so highly of Liam Lawson? Possibly not, but he picks up more crucial points for him, and he's now scored 4 points in the first 4 of the 5 Grand Prix. So doing what he could. All you could ask for, doing all you can ask. It's difficult, really, because I just don't think it's been the best weekend from Liam Lawson, but the result is really, really good. So hard to judge when it's like that. I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. 8th place man, Pierre Gasly, and it's been a difficult weekend for him. He's been put in the shade by his teammate Franco Colapinto this weekend. Not really sure why he's struggled as much as he has, but he just didn't seem like he was happy with the car. After a brilliant start, he's now really... is he struggling? It's just that I think Colapinto's had 2 really good weekends in a row, more of what we expect of him. And Gasly, he was normally comfortably best of the rest. He's dropped off a little bit of that. He had a difficult weekend, but picks up some points again, so we can be happy with that. I've given him a 6 out of 10. 9th place man, Carlos Sainz, and more points again for him in the Williams. He's picked up a couple of 9 places already, hasn't he, this season? So probably the absolute most he could have got this weekend in the Williams. I don't think he thought that would have been on after qualifying in 15th place. Qualifying wasn't the best for him. He had shown good promise in the sprint where he qualified in 10th, finished 10th in the end in the sprint, missed out points there, but he picked up a 9th place in the race. He can be fairly happy with that. Some more smiles for the Williams boys. They're going away with some points. Not exactly where they needed to be, but there's improvements, and they're now getting closer to the midfield battles, and probably soon mixing it with the Racing Bulls. They've got a bit of a step to make to get to the Alpines, but a fairly solid weekend for him. I'm giving him also a 6 out of 10. 10th place man, Ollie Berman, and he can be very happy with his weekend. A point to come home with. I don't think that was on the cards for the Haas team at all. They've had a bit of a struggle for most of the weekend in the sprint. It didn't go well for him. He finished a lap down in 18th place. In the race, though, it was fairly quiet. He was... again, a little bit in no man's land, but he'll be happy with that just to get some points without too much pressure. Kept it on track, and that's, I guess, all you need to do sometimes. Difficult. I'm giving him also a 6 out of 10. 11th place man, Oscar Piastri, and well, it's not been his best weekend. He was a solid sprint, but he was, again, behind his teammate all weekend, but only a little bit. So I guess when it happens twice in both qualifying sessions, you've just been beaten by your teammate, haven't you? And then he was clearly very unhappy with the call to go on intermediates. He came on the radio twice on both of the extra formations laps to say, look, it looks like we've made the wrong choice here. I think we should pit, but I think the team opted to go because the tyres were going to be that much warmer and you'd get a better start on the inters, as did it proved with Lando Norris. In fact, Norris was leading down into turn 1. Piastri didn't quite get that good of a start, and then I think they were just looking at the field spread where they might fall more, instead of falling last by pitting and then coming out on tyres. They'll fall in, probably not last, because of the field spread and avoid any incident, although they would have avoided incident with a pit lane start. So he didn't look happy with that, and then a really poor mistake, which cost him. You got the slammed into the back, or into the side of Alex Albon, which is an unusual mistake to be that badly wrong. It looked like one was on, but he'd clearly overdone that and overshot or just didn't brake well enough or locked up. And the mistake took out Alex Albon through no fault of his own, and then he had an extra pit stop to change the front wing, and then he got a 10-second penalty as well, and he just finished 30 seconds behind P10. A horrible weekend for him and the McLaren team when you look at how it's gone for them in the race, where the big points are handed out. I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. 12th place man, Nico Hülkenberg, and he's been just looking on the outside of the top 10, hasn't he, really? 2 11th place qualifyings. It's just been Audi just not quite there, are they? They're race starts in the sprint really cost him. They were way down, and he finished 15th in the sprint race in the end. And in the main race, a mistake speeding in the pit lane, which cost him 5 seconds, and that was a little bit unnecessary. But the car's just... It's a little bit there, isn't it? He just needs that extra little step in this Audi to break into the top 10, but it's just not quite there yet. Odd weekends they were able to do that, especially in the hands of Gabi Bortoleto, but Nico Hülkenberg not quite there yet, but he's getting closer to it. A solid weekend, you've got to say. I've given him also a 5 out of 10. Next up, Gabi Bortoleto, and it's been a difficult weekend for him, actually. He's been in the shade of his teammate all weekend. Comfortably outpaced by him in both qualifying sessions. In the race, it's just a quiet race for him in the end. Didn't look like any points were going to be on for him, and brought it home without any incident. It's probably all they can ask for in some of these weekends for the Audi boys. And Gabi, I don't think he can be too disappointed. He's finished just directly behind his teammate, but he's just been behind his teammate, and that's who you are judged against in Formula One when you've not got the best car. He's fallen a little bit behind him. I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. 14th place man, Esteban Ocon. And, well, not a great race for him in the end. He's been beaten by his teammate, Esteban Ocon. But earlier in the weekend, he was the quicker man of the two Haas guys. He finished 13th in the sprint race, 5 places ahead of Ollie Berman. So he could be fairly happy with that. But when it counts and the points are handed out, his teammates nicked a point, and he's rode home 14th. He was a country mile behind the Audis, but had a big gap to Lance Stroll behind him. Tough weekend. I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. 15th place man, Lance Stroll, and another difficult weekend for him and the Aston Martin. He just didn't look interested at all, despite it being his home Grand Prix. I mean, there was some footage of him handing out an award to a marshal at the start of the race, and it was the most uninterested performance I've ever seen, or just any interaction with any fans. It just looked so miserable, like he didn't want to be there. And actually, it's getting to a point now, I don't think fans want to see him there either anymore, isn't it? It's just, he's got absolutely hammered by Fernando Alonso every weekend in qualifying, and he's finished the race 4 laps down. 3 out of 10. 16th place man and last of the runners, Valtteri Bottas, and it's been a difficult weekend for him on his side of the garage because Sergio Perez, despite the Cadillac not looking like they're going to pick up any points, but Sergio was running 11th in the sprint, was racing and looked racy in the main race before his DNF came about. So on Valtteri's, he was just comfortably last again. I'm not sure if he was carrying car issues throughout that race because he finished 4 laps down as well. Valtteri needs to up his game a little bit here. He's getting put in the shade by Sergio Perez. And this one, there was a big gap between the two teammates, so something that he needs to fix for next time out. I've given him a 3 out of 10. On to the DNFs, and we'll start with the one that got, furthest into the race, and it was only just by 1 lap. Sergio Perez. And like I was saying, unlike his teammate, he's had a very, very good weekend. Sprint, he was 11th, then obviously got that penalty, moved him back to 14th, but the racing was absolutely brilliant from him. Qualifying again, he performed well. In the race, it looked like he was never going to be in for points, but looks like another decent points or place finish for him in the Cadillac outfit. He just looked comfortable. But then car issues, his suspension just gave way, didn't it, on the way into the pits, and a retirement again, which is a little bit disappointing because, but for that, it was a really, really promising and a solid weekend for him. He can be very happy with his work done. I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. Then comes Lando Norris. It's a bit of a difficult one for him, isn't it? And he went to lap 38 in the race before his gearbox gave up. But the race was just an absolute write-off, wasn't it, after the call to go on Inters. And then he made a couple of stops. They just didn't seem to be chewing through their tyres. The performance that we've seen from him in the sprint just didn't seem to be there for him in the race. And his was a race weekend of two halves. The sprint was really promising, qualified third, nicked a position and came home second in the sprint. So really positive on that side of things. And it was going horribly wrong already before the DNF on Sunday. But overall, I'm giving him a 7 out of 10 because his sprint was absolutely brilliant. Then comes a big one, George Russell. It was such a promising weekend, much better. The pressure was on and he was delivering, really, wasn't he? He got the 2 pole positions for both qualifying sessions, brought home the win in the sprint, but despite that move, which will split opinion of whether he shoved Kimi Antonelli off track or not. And in the race, he was leading, despite them, 2 of them swapping positions. I think Kimi Antonelli had the better pace and the better time management up until that point of his DNF. I think he might have struggled to hold on to that because in that stage of the race, Kimi looked like the faster of the 2. But who knows after the pits and how that would have gone. And it's a whole story of really what ifs in the race for him in the end. A massive kick in the teeth, 25 points lost to potentially his championship rival and teammate. And he's just robbed of what could have been. And he gave some strange comments in the media afterwards of like some people will be sort of happy and it's just, people will be, glad and they're not working in my favor, as if like there's someone there destroying his race weekends for him and sort of wishing him to do badly within the team almost, and is the way that came out. And really just going for it's Kimi Antonelli's title to lose, so he's already heaping up the championship mind games 5 races in. The nice cuddly best of teammates George Russell disappearing and fast after the first 2 Grand Prix, isn't he, where he's realised that Kimi Antonelli is coming and he's coming strong. He's got a big, every weekend's a big weekend for him now, isn't it? He can't afford any more mistakes. And it was mistakes, really, that let Kimi Antonelli in once he got into the lead of the race at the Canadian Grand Prix, that big lock-up at the hairpin. And, I don't think it was a mistake with the DNF. That's just unfortunate that the way the cookie crumbles. And, I'm sure that might happen for Kimi Antonelli later on in the season. But he's just got to keep his head up. It's a long season to go. But it's really difficult to judge because up until the DNF, it was looking like it could have been a clean sweep. First position in the sprint, qualifying in the sprint, pole, and then was leading up until the DNF, and who knows what could have been. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. It could have been higher than that. I can't give him a 10 because he just didn't win, but yeah, 9 out of 10 for George Russell. Then comes Fernando Alonso, got to lap 23. His season his race weekend just really unravelled, hasn't it? Mechanical issues. Throughout the weekend, he DNF'd in the sprint, although it was a mistake in the sprint qualifying that see him crash out and stop the sprint qualifying. So an unusual mistake from Fernando Alonso there. But then 2 DNFs. He's out-qualified his teammate. Hard to judge where the car is just so poor and it's just breaking down on him. I've given him a 5 out of 10. Then comes Alex Albon. He was taken out at lap 11 in the race by Oscar Piastri, and he's had really hard luck here in Canada. The groundhog, which was just so unfortunate, ruined his practice, and then he missed the sprint qualifying. And then for the sprint, he was 19th and then taken out in the race without given the opportunity to really show what he could do. So really, probably the unluckiest drivers or only unluckiest weekends that I can remember. It was really, really horrible for him. Difficult to judge when you've just not been able to compete. I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. And then finally, Arvid Lindblad, and he just didn't get off the grid, did he? Which was a cause of the first formation lap or the first race start being aborted. He just couldn't get it into gear, so reliability issues there for him. But it was a solid weekend. He comfortably had his teammate in the shade, picked up the last position point in the sprint race over the P8, and he out-qualified his teammate again. And for all the world, it looked like he would have beaten him in the race as well. It's his first time around Canada, and he's been a really impressive rookie, showing really strong pace, and looked like, definitely would have been in the mix for points of 6th, 7th place at least this weekend. So really, really unlucky for him. I've given him an 8 out of 10. On to my predictions review, and well, it's not been a good one for me at all. I've only just got 3 right out of 12. For sprint qualifying, I had Norris to lead Kimi and then Max in the front 3, and it was Russell, Kimi and Norris. So just Kimi and P2 correct there. For the sprint race, I thought it was going to be a strong start from the McLarens. It just never was it? I had Norris to win, Piastri second, and then Kimi Antonelli third. Kimi was third, so that's the third one I got right. For the qualifying, I thought Kimi would nick pole, and it looked like he was going to take that pole but for that brilliant lap from George Russell in the end. But yeah, I had Kimi to take pole, Russell second, and Norris third, and it was just the third place of Lando Norris that I got right. For the race, I had Russell to lead, Kimi Antonelli, and then Lando Norris. And well, I got all 3 wrong, and it was a brilliant win from Kimi Antonelli. 4 wins in a row. He led home a brilliant podium of Lewis Hamilton second and Max Verstappen in third place. All 3 really bringing some huge light and excitement to the race. It was brilliant action. Probably one of the best Grand Prix I've seen in a long time. But yeah, there we have it. That is the predictions review and the driver ratings. Up next, Monaco in 2 weeks' time. Watch out for my Monaco preview coming early next week. And we'll see how we get in Monaco. It should be an interesting race there. Ferrari already being tipped to be the team to beat almost by everybody before we head there. Let's see how it works out, but it should be interesting. Qualifying is a big one when we get there. But there we have it. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you on the next one.